Hello, everyone, and welcome to this March meetup of the Swiss RadicalxChange Foundation chapter. My name is Tom, and along with Sebastian, we've been putting together this group since the beginning of the year, and we've been aiming to have one meetup a month, and so far so good. This is our third meetup of 2022, and what I'd like to do is just give a quick background to how this meetup came together, and then we'll turn it over to our speakers, who I think have also a bit of a format they want to do with us. So, as I mentioned, this is the third meetup. The first one was in January, and we had Glenn Weil, who's the founder of RadicalxChange, as our featured guest. And as part of that conversation, those of you who were there might remember. But he talked about his work with g0v and his work with Audrey Tang, who's the digital minister in Taiwan, and they actually work quite closely together. And and I'm just kind of reading from my notes here, but he's because Glenn's very into pluralism and digital democracy, and he said, look, there's a strong connection between RadicalxChange and the g0v movement, and he said everyone in the West thinks technology and democracy are at war. Because we're all worried about our privacy and Facebook and everything, and he says, but in one of the world's most successful democracies, in Taiwan, is also one of the most digitized, and they're harnessing technology, he said, to empower cooperation and empower plurality. And as out of that, I reached out to Glenn and to Matt Pruitt, the RadicalxChange Foundation president, and he connected us with Mei-Chun, who's on this call. Who's an academic studying g0v, and Mei-Chun connected us to Yun, who is an activist as far as I understand it, but we'll let them introduce themselves in a second. And that's how this all came about. And I think without any further ado, so what we'll do is we'll have Yun give a presentation and do things a little bit in the g0v way, and then we'll open this up to a Q&A. And it'd be great to have a really good discussion. I think this isn't necessarily a RadicalxChange topic, but it's very much a democracy topic and a participatory democracy topic. So for those of us in Switzerland, I think there's a lot of overlap here. So without much further ado, Yun, over to you.
Okay, hi, hello everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, cool. So before I start to introduce g0v and digital democracy in Taiwan, I would like to let everybody here self-introduce yourself in 3 keywords in a g0v way. So it's very simple. You just have to type in the chat room. And MG, do you want to demonstrate that?
Sure, let me do this.
So I'm Yan Chen. I'm a g0v participant, and I'm a product manager who participated in g0v for I think 6 to 8 years, and do some projects, writing, translation, and community buildings. So if it's the 3 keywords, my 3 keywords is
So while everyone's typing, my name is Mei-Chun, or you can call me MG. I'm an anthropologist who studied g0v and then became a g0v. And I also participate in an open government movement in Taiwan. To just show you this, the way we do it is 3 keywords. You just want everyone to speak out or just type?
Just type, it's okay. So the reason why 3 keywords in g0v hackathon, it was because there are 100 people in the hackathon and want the self-introduction to be efficient. And I think it's also a good icebreaker, so that for me as a speaker, I can know my audience, so that I hope my sharing will be more resonant to all of you.
So did everybody get that? There's a chat function here, and the idea is to put in your 3 keywords in the chat.
Okay, cool. Then I'm going to share my screen and start my presentation. Okay. Okay, I think I'm good. Okay, so I think I will probably speak to 15 or 20 minutes. It really depends. So hi everyone, I'm Yunchen. As I already introduced myself, I'm a g0v participant, which means g0v is a community, and I participated community just like you participate in this RadicalxChange community as well. So this is my Twitter handle, and the slides, most slides are in Creative Commons by attribution, share alike, and welcome to use these slides. And g0v is essentially an open source community. And today, I'm speaking as myself, not speaking for the community or speaking for Taiwanese, just to make it clear. The following are my personal opinions and interpretation, and there are other Taiwanese and g0vers in these rooms other than Mei-Chun and I. So if any questions are welcome. Oh, by the way, if you have questions, you just throw up in the chat room, and we can review that in the Q&A session. No, I'm not turning on my video. I prefer people just focus on the slides. Okay, so why do we want to talk about digital democracy? I was interviewed by an American think tank last year, and that was my question. Because we have electric device years ago, and we had internet years ago. Why in 2022, or we are talking about digital democracy? Like, we have living in the digital world for so long. Why now? So actually, I don't think digital democracy should be a point at all. Because you cannot fix a broken thing by digital technology. If you want to add digital as a solution to everything, then you will only get digital broken things. And that's one quote from Cy Hedro, who is a designer from San Francisco. So rather than talking about digital democracy, I want to talk about technology can be one vehicle to liberate our imagination and practice of democracy. So, for example, like in the past, it's impossible that the government share raw materials or raw data to every citizens because they cannot. Hard to send, every government data to your home by mail. But with technology, you can publish a website, right? So that's how technology can do. But I mean, technology is not the means. Technology is not the goals, but the means. Just like Switzerland, you have direct democracy, and you have very unique, the 7 members of the federal council, which means that you don't have one prime minister or president to stay in power for 4 or 5 years. And that was all back from, I think, 19th century, which we didn't have internet or digital technology at the time. But the idea of a more direct democracy, or the idea of, not that centralized power, can be older than democracy, or we can have more imagination of that. So like now we have mobile applications, and now we are going into the era of Web3. I'm interested in how those technology can embody our visions of democracy. So it's about hacking the system, not only tools. So for me, democracy or politics in the past, a lot of narrative from the government is that, we want to inform citizens so that they know well enough to vote for a good policy or a good candidate. But my vision of democracy is move to the right. We collaborate, we empower each other. It's not the government educating the citizens. It's us, citizens or not citizens who just live in the country, work together. So to break down that vision, we actually need vibrant civil society and also open government. So I was starting from the civil society part, and I would like to call the thing g0v is doing civic check, which my definition is that everyone can use technology to change a society. And since we are building technology for democracy, then the technology development process itself should be of the people, by the people, for the people, just like our democracy. So that's the ideal, right? And a lot of time, g0v is challenged that, an app cannot fix climate change. So, technology are not silver bullets to everything. I totally agree with that statement. And my ideal is because we are not just using technology, we are actually using new mindsets to build new tools. Like the idea of decentralization make us to build blockchain. And then those new tools, we probably can shape new behaviors because technology enables us to do so. And then those behavior probably can boost advocacy or reshape our democracy. And this is too theoretical. I'm going to real projects after this. So vibrant civil society. And now I got to g0v. So g0v founded in Taiwan back in 2012, and it's a polycentric, civic, open source communities that really starting from information transparency, open government, and it's a very grassroots community. So the start from g0v was our government having a advertisement on TV saying that policy is too complicated, so you just trust the government. And four hackers were pissed off, like what I mean. So instead of being just angry, they actually built something and won in a hackathon. And then they used the prize of the hackathon to host the g0v hackathon and continue till now. And that project was to visualize the central government budget. So this one is the budget. And you don't know Chinese, it's fine. Because for people who read Chinese, they don't want to read it either. So they visualize it into bubbles. And so you can see the size of bubbles, like how much spent on military and education. Actually, you can see we have a military budget is double of our education budget. So that's the beginning, the transparency, that the citizens can access to government information in a more digestible way, and then we can say that, we can have further participation. So for the past 10 years, g0v have grown into quite large. g0v has 100 people in bi-monthly hackathon and around 1,000 people in biannual summit, and now we have over 11,000 people on Slack. They are not all active participants, but it's really hard for me to say how large g0v is, but you can see it as a collective community movement. So 3 pillars of g0v communities are open source, hands-on, and public spirits. And one motto is that ask not why nobody is doing this, you are the nobody. This is so powerful. Like, whenever you say, why nobody clean the room, then you clean the room. It's like that. For me, I don't wait for the government to take actions. I take actions and solve problems ourselves. So one example was in 2014, there was a very large gas explosion in a city, and no one knew what was going on. So people build like online collaborating platform. People report that, I see, there's a damage here, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of g0v projects are like this, like disaster response or an emergency crisis occur, and then the netizen power can do crowdsourcing very quickly. Sometimes more efficient than the government. And then there's another popular g0v project, I would say, it's called CodeFact. It's a Line bot. Line is a private messaging app like WhatsApp or Messenger. And they crowdsourcing to fact check the rumors that flow on the line. It was like a joke that, let me Google that for you. So the original idea was very simple. You send the rumor or the message to the line bot, and the bot would tell you the result. But then they realized it's much harder than that, and also we now in the disinformation world kind of like that. I not participating in this project, but they are a very good example to show g0v spirit. And this project is the project I participate in as a program manager called This Factory. It's reporting the illegal factories on the farmlands. So there are 50,000 illegal factories in Taiwan that create high risks for polluting farmland or causing fires. And there were at least 5 firefighters die in those illegal factories for the past, I think, 5 or 8 years. So this reporting platform that the citizens can take a photo and upload the coordinate very easily to report the factories, and the NGO will officially send the official documents to the government to ask for demolition according to the law. And then the right one is about building a mini game that to help engage urban users to crowdsource identify the satellite image to help the campaign. Okay, those are the topics. You can see they are actually quite diverse in g0v, and there are many projects that in gender, in indigenous rights, or a lot of things. So the most important thing I think of g0v community to share, it's about the open collaboration. And it's how we try to be decentralized in our project or our community, how to be open as default, and how everybody can contribute. Most of the time, I think people see g0v project as the technology, those shining stuff, those websites. But it's really how g0v participants try to build things. So in case that folks in here don't know what is open source, basically like this slide is in Creative Commons license. And my license is, as long as you credit me and sharing the same way, then you are free to use it whatever you want. And to a website project, that means that our code base and even our design and our documentation is freely available, not in free beer, but in freedom. So that's the open source idea. And I think another myth is that in Taiwan, people a lot of time call, g0v is a virtual community, which we are real people and we see each other offline as well. It's actually an online to offline collaboration. This is a photo from the hackathon, and people gather around the food. The most important thing in the hackathon is the food. So any newcomers to a hackathon, I always say, if you hear the lunch is here, please get your lunch in 5 minutes. Otherwise, you will disappear. So hackathon is a place that g0v participants can learn from each other, brainstorm for solutions, and build some prototypes. It's not a hackathon to win any prize. It's a hackathon for citizens to identify the social problems and to see how we can solve them together. So the participants are really, really diverse. There are engineers, designers, journalists, NGO staff, public servants, lawyers, doctors, teachers, junior high school students. Everyone is equal in the community. Everyone can pitch the idea on stage, and people try their best to see how come we can come together to build the things. The hackathon is just a start of a project to solve a problem, or hackathon is like a sandbox where you can experiment in and to fail your any crazy ideas about democracy or social good. So to engage participants, there's a very cute profession stickers so that participants from different backgrounds can find their contributions in the community. And as I say, it's very important for g0v to be open as default. So this is the hackathon pitch spreadsheet. You can just openly edit the spreadsheet online, say what you want to do. And then that's not only limited to hackathon, but also to every project and like other open source projects. Well, this documentation is the collaboration interest of COFAX, the Linebot project. You can see at the left, there are some English. They point to you like where you should look for documentation for user, editors, developers, and designers, so that without talking to any participants, you can find the way to contribute. In g0v culture, we call the project a hole. So you can launch your initial project called dig a hole. If you don't have time or if you don't have the skills to do it yourself, then you can push someone to fill it. So that's the spirit. But democracy is not only constructed by citizens, right? It's always about the government involved. So what if we feel like this government is not the government we want? So open government is also a large part. And I think one critical event in Taiwan was in 2014, there was Sunflower movement that really changed a lot and brought open government into the spotlight. People want more decentralized organization. People want more transparent and extra live streaming of the government events, etc. So one example was citizens to monitor the government. So the government actually has public records on the campaign finance who sponsor those political candidates. But they claim that they don't have the digital file, which was weird because you already print them out. You must have the digital files. So what the citizens can do if the government insisted that they don't have the digital files? So they actually use a programming to cut it. Someone scanned all the documents and then use programming to cut each session into something like reCAPTCHA. So people can help to do the OCR part to type it out so that to digitalize those documents. I think it's within 72 hours, there were more than 10,000 participants to join this. And back in 2014, the OCR technology was not sufficient to do so. And this project actually continued till now that many media follow this approach. And then I think it's last year, or probably 2 years ago, the government finally released the digital files of these political campaign sponsors. And this one is also about public-private collaboration. So more than monitor, can the citizens co-working with the government. And I think this is a famous case of Taiwan internationally that our government opened the real-time API of how many Macs still available in each pharmacy in Taiwan. And the developers can just connect the API and build different types of interaction interface for different profiles of users, like website, application, or in the form of Linebot. It's a great story, but I want to remind everyone that this is the shining website I say that people see on the surface. I want to mention that the reason that Taiwan can keep the lowest death or lowest cases of COVID in the world was not all about high-tech technology. It was that we have a national healthcare insurance system. It's about our government secure the mass production way before WHO confirmed that COVID is human-to-human transmittable. And it was because back in 2003, after SARS, the hospital system in Taiwan underwent radical reform in case for the next pandemic. it was all that context alone that you can see this kind of collaboration appear within 1 week. So open government is more important for me than if it's a digital one. So I want to share one experience that I participated in. It's the collaborative meeting of National Health Insurance EID planning. It was low tech for the discussion. It's a whole day workshop. I think it's very important that this time the Ministry of Healthcare, they brought in stakeholders. They brought in the users of diverse profiles, who are parents, who are the elders without smartphones, who are blue-collar workers, and also invited other than doctors, but nurses work in the remote clinic. The scenario will be very different from a hospital in the capital. And also public servants, IT specialists, and also the human rights activists to question on the privacy issue. I would say these attempts or experience are still ongoing, and we still have a lot of things to improve, but we are trying to do. And as from the g0v part, I want to use the theme of the g0v summit to show the evolvement of this kind of civic tech or open government thinking. So in 2016, the thing is this construct and rebuild. So after the 300,000 participant protests, we wanted the government to be more open. Okay, then, but what's your version of the open government? How to build that? And then 2 years later, Taiwan was ranked #1 in open data in the world. The question turned into, now what? Open and then. So people are talking about how to build the ecosystems to make those changes more sustainable, and not only including civil society and public sector, but also like private sector to join this movement. And in 2020, there are some reflections that how to outreach more local communities instead of like, tech people living in Taipei, imagining the problems in the countryside. And also in 2020, g0v community changed its manifesto from decentralized community to polymetric community to recognize the fact that g0v is not a totally decentralized community, but we try our best, or I say a lot of people try their best to do so. So to close my introduction, you can join g0v.sec. Please join. It's an international community as well. But basically, it's a spirit that, what are you doing? Nobody can stop them, or nobody can build something, and you can just say, I'm the nobody. And I believe that everyone in this room right now are the nobody. And I'm really interested to see the intersection of the discussion, because I personally don't know that much about Web3, about crypto, about blockchain, or about DAO project. And I think discussing those governance model would be interesting as well. And actually right now in g0v, there are a few Web3 projects so far. So I want to explore the possibility with all of you. Okay, I think I can stop.
Wow.
I stayed too long.
No, you did great. That was absolutely fascinating, and it just so many sort of topics and things we can get into. And I think so. Charles put a question in the chat about pol.is, and I think that was something on my list as well. So you talked about you want to know more about Web3, and I think we'd all be interested in this discussion to talk a bit more about tooling. And I think pol.is is part of that. So Charles, you want to start the discussion there, and what you had in mind?
Thanks so much. Wow, Ewan and Tom, thanks for organizing. Really great. So I'm pretty close with Tom Atlee, who's talked at length with Audrey Tang and has written a lot about g0v, vTaiwan, and pol.is, and that was some years ago. And just very recently, in fact, even yesterday got my hands on pol.is for the first time. So interesting timing. I just was curious in general, or particular, just what's a good way to think about this tool or tool set, to approach it, to set it up, and to actually use it. Thanks.
MG, I have a slide of vTaiwan in pol.is hidden. Did you want to speak on this, or I continue?
Either way is fine.
Okay.
You can speak first, and then I can add some points.
Yeah.
Is that
okay? Yeah, sure. Okay, so I know that people are interested in vTaiwan and pol.is, but I hid the slide. So first of all, for people who don't know vTaiwan is a kind of a informal negotiation discussion platform running by community and the government at the same time. And it was an attempt to bring in multi-stakeholders meetings and an attempt to use many digital tools in this discussion process as well. And this is a diagram that one designer to map out the process and the digital tools using it. And then one important one is pol.is. Basically, pol.is is a website that people can vote on one statement. So you can agree, disagree, and pass. So each statement, you have one data point. And you can see it as a metric, and then the computer algorithm then can automatically program to group the answers of different participants into different groups. So you can see people in different groups and what are the common ground statements, like what most people agree on and what are the most controversial statements. It was widely used in vTaiwan and even introduced into some events and websites. But I would say it was limited to high-tech people. But there were several vTaiwan discussions that pol.is did help people to discuss about the like Uber regulation or drone regulation or fintech regulation, but the draft or the consensus of vTaiwan has no legal power over any government agency. So a lot of the time, the result of vTaiwan was not implemented, and it was the political power decide the results of those topics. MJ, did you want to share more on that?
Sure. I think I should say this first, that vTaiwan is actually stopped functioning around 2018. So it's for like several years. I know it's famous outside of Taiwan because of some of the reports about g0v and vTaiwan and Ojuri. The reason why it stopped around that time is because, when vTaiwan was still a community thing, Ojuri was kind of the leading, or we say a leading figure of that project. And then she became the digital minister, and then that means that she can no longer be that kind of like community leaders of that project. So she need to like transition her role. So, and also at the time there was no proposal from the government side into the vTaiwan system. And that means that the new government lose the interest in that vTaiwan. That's why vTaiwan stopped kind of functioning after then. So that's into what I want to say is that it did have a very experimental ways of decision making inside the government. However, it really depends on political will, because what it wants to come out is low adjustment, and then that needs the legislative, which means the parliament in Taiwan, to accept the decision from this kind of system. So this is the first point I want to make. And the second thing is that about police. Police is interesting. It use some kind of visualized way to allow people to dialogue online and to share their opinions, and then people can see that how your opinion come closer to probably somebody you know who you don't think is actually in your team or your party, but you probably have the similar opinions. So that kind of visualized ways make people to rethink about how public opinion can be expressed. Having said that, it is not the only tool used in vTaiwan. What I find amazing about vTaiwan is that it actually uses a lot of different ways to collect opinions online and offline to reach multi-stakeholders. Like in Uber's case, a lot of the important role will be the taxi drivers who don't use vTaiwan. Who don't use police that much. They might use text or other messenger apps rather than going online to doing this vTaiwan pool. So it is only just one way to collect information, but they also have different ways combined. And then after this gathering of opinions through online method, they will have like offline meetings in persons with multi-stakeholders and also government officials from the related agencies coming together to sit down to discuss. So the spirit of this session is to think about how can we do participatory democracy with digital help, but not totally rely on digital. So I think that's very important to think about vTaiwan. I hope this explains something.
That's great. Thank you.
So maybe to continue that, so to what extent is if vTaiwan's not around anymore, to what extent or how can we visualize digital democracy in Taiwan right now? Is g0v the main conduit and the different projects you're using? Are there other programs?
Okay. So from my perspective, I think the word digital democracy is a little tricky. So everyone have different definition about this digital democracy. Somebody focus on democracy, about participation, about how we decide on public things in a more decentralized way. Some people think more about the digital tools being used in this whole process, or open data, or more like tech things, right? So people have different idea about what digital democracy means. I won't say that Taiwan is leading the digital democracy in something like this in the world. In Taiwan, we all know that our government, the government system is not digitalized at all. So that's the website's very difficult to use. There are some they're still using a lot of paperwork, and you need to have the stamp to go through the bureaucracy systems in order to get things done. So this still happens in Taiwan. But the beauty of digital democracy in Taiwan for me is how citizens trying to participate with different kind of tools. That tools means some digital tools and also non-digital tools, but with the idea of openness. That openness coming from these open source cultures, that's a kind of digital cultures. So that's the beauty of it. So when we're talking about this open spirit, then we need to think about how to include more people, those who are not skilled at high tech, those who only have cell phones but not computers, those who have no access to stable internet. How to include these people into the conversation. So that's why I mentioned that vTaiwan is a very good experiment, because they're really trying to think about those people, not just those high-tech people. So this is kind of my thinking about digital democracy in Taiwan. Any others want to add? Or Taishan, because since you are here and Taiwan is also a g0v, but now in Europe, right?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm based in the Netherlands, but I am participating in one of the projects caring about the wildlife, especially the Taiwan black bears. One of my best friends, he is a vet. He is also doing the Taiwan black bear research. So one day he told me he has some challenges to deal with regarding how we collect more Taiwan black bear research data, something. So this is how the story goes. Yeah, and nice to see everyone here.
I think Kaishang just exemplified that how digital democracy really works in Taiwan. I mean, that means a lot of public issues happening in Taiwan and around the world. That's not just about the politics. Sometimes it's about environment. Sometimes about wildlife. These are all public issues, and every citizen can try to participate using their own tools. And that's how in my way that I would define Taiwan's advantages in digital democracy in general. Yeah. Yunzhen, you want to add something? You mentioned PO network, right? Oh, and Joshua, are you trying to raise your hand or?
Yes, hi guys, my name is Josh, and I'm actually in Taishan's team in the Black Bear project, and but I'm based here in Zurich, and so I work from Zurich and work with the team, and I would like to share my experience joining the g0v bi-monthly conference in Taiwan last October and it was actually really fun. I think the entry barrier is really low, and like people can all come together, go into this physical conference that took place every 2 months, and the energy is just incredible. Like people go in there, like even though you don't know what you want to do, or like you don't know how you can help, you could just put down 3 keywords, like what we did today. You put down 3 keywords, like your skills or your interests, and people can come and find you, like different projects, different groups. They're all citizens projects, and so you sort of, as long as you want to help, no matter if it's programming or like marketing or graphic design, whatever you want, you go there and they can find a role for you in this big conference. And I was really interested in like black bear conservation, and so I found the group, and Taishang has been the project manager of this project, and it's been really fun, and I think that's the whole point of it. It's not really that much pressure, but then you enjoy having a community and doing something that you feel good about yourself, and like sort of be a part of this team that sort of contribute to the better good of the society. So that's why I wanted to add in this.
Yeah, cool, great. And we'll have to
actually,
coffee.
I have another question on the you mentioned in the end you talked about Web3 and DAOs. Kind of working in that space, I'm kind of curious what angles you see of interest there. So many times, you know, the kind of smaller DAOs that emerge out of the purely technical space are focusing oftentimes or utilize DAOs for resilience in governance, for kind of ensuring authenticity and integrity of any of the decision-making processes as they happen there. You know, and to take the counterpoint to that, I would say when you just organize yourselves within grassroots efforts of communities, many times that's not even needed, right? But when you talk about the actual governance, when you talk about the actual democratic processes, that is very much needed. So at which level do you see governance decisions interesting within g0v, and how does it stand, you know, how is it approaching the actual government in Taiwan?
So first, Sebastian, did you mind to explain what is DAO to participants? And second,
Sure.
I think this question, MG has more research than me to answer this question.
Yeah. So the definition of a DAO is really rough, right? So I will try to bring a common denominator that, as I understand it. So to me, DAOs are participatory decision-making processes, which are not just digital, but they're interfacing some sort of registry that is recorded on a blockchain in a decentralized way. So by means of typically token distribution, Tom has 10 tokens, Sebastian only has 2 tokens. That's why Tom has more influence potentially on some decision-making processes. Talked about quadratic voting a few times ago. And these sort of frameworks allow us to have continuous, immediate, and automated governance procedures that embed really well in other digital processes and specifically on-chain processes. That's how I would capture it. And I'm kind of curious what sort of interested angles you would see, because we hear it many times, within these small technical DAOs that I'm familiar with. We hear this now. Looking to you, I'm very excited because you guys, you're the real deal, right? You're not just playing with technology, you're actually trying to take this into the big game. So that's why I'm very interested what the most immediate access points there would be.
So, Yunzhen, are you going to answer these questions?
I will answer the DAO one, but as for how Gov0 governance decisions go, could you answer that one?
Sure.
So, yeah, I think a very different things of Gov0 and DAOs is that the Gov0 community doesn't have any very strict or automatically compile rules of governance. So it's more based on communication and different governance models for different projects. But overall, Gov0 community has some kind of governance model. And what I think is that to what extent we can apply DAO to a more political or less technology space, because now more people start to have cryptos and NFT kind of just overnight famous in Taiwan. So that's the applications I'm thinking, but I don't have any answers yet. As for the Gov0 governance model, MG probably can say more.
Yeah, so I want to just add first about this blockchain ideas. So in Gov0, there are just a few, not many projects using blockchain or related technologies. I'm not tech people, so my definition of blockchain will be very broad or like vague, but just trying to say that most of these projects focusing on how to store, how to maintain information and contents that's censored by China. So there's some project about Hong Kong's people trying in the Gov0 hack zones to trying to use blockchain technology to store those censored journalists. Those are like shut down by the government or shut down by themselves because they are afraid of China's censorship. And also not within Gov0, but another group in Taiwan called Matters. It's not actually just Taiwan, but Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, that those Chinese writing people are using blockchain technologies as they like began to do like contact sharing, to write blogs, so those information can store online. So it's more about how to maintain to store this information, but not yet to use them into this governance model. So just like Yunzhen says, like Gov0 starts from a hackathon, and then there's a prize, and then people start to having another hackathon, buying fried chicken, buying food, and then next hackathon, let's continue hackathon. And until now, people haven't really started to think about if we need to use this kind of blockchain idea to embed into our governance model. Most of the governance model come from when we meet an issue, when we meet some kind of conflicts or a query, then people will try to have a shared note, sit down and type out ideas. So why I'm saying that is trying to think about within GovZero, there are more than tech people. There are people like me, anthropologists. I don't know about any kind of code. When I see this like black and white English things, I will feel worried. Well, what's that? It's code. Yeah. So for me, the easiest hack to communicate will be those share notes. Just a Google document. Actually, we use HackMD. It's another technology built by good friends of GovZero. And so I guess the reason why we're not really step into this blockchain world is also because that blockchain sounds a little bit high tech, and that is a little bit away from this openness and inclusive spirit of GovZero. So there are not yet this kind of experiment, but I do think there is good opportunity provided by this, and maybe we can think about it together. Yeah, I hope this answered the question.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to add on MG's remark. First, I want to explain to MG that why governance model is so important on blockchain, because on blockchain there are some consensus need to make, not just by machine but also by people. So like a conclusion or something. So how did you make that decision? It's very important as my understanding, in Web3 or blockchain world. So that's why I think the governance model will be interesting to think how we can use it into a more political context way. And I also want to add something is when I watched the first meetup of RadicalxChange Suite chapter, I realized that incentives were heavily used in the conversations, which I never use in GovZero, and I don't know how to measure or how to design incentives for such things. So you can also hear from other participants that the motivation or the things driven are probably not, I don't know how to categorize into incentives. That's one interesting thought. Yeah.
Thanks. So I hear that, resilience and access to information for that decentralized technologies makes sense. On the governance side, we're still pre-experimentation. Maybe that's fair enough. Maybe many organizations, including the very technical ones in many blockchain domains, are not leveraging, many of these DAO toolings, including like one of the biggest ones, Ethereum themselves. They do not leverage many of these, DAO-based decisions. So maybe that's fair enough for a bunch of projects. Thank you for these insights.
There's a in Hong Kong and Taiwan that it's a kind of like a DAO project. So this Litecoin you can feedback to the counter providers, and also they have some like the Gitcoin project proposal thing. So there are something, but I would say not at large scale yet.
Yeah, and that coin is used by Matters, which a platform that I mentioned just earlier. Yeah, and I also want to reply to the question about platform earlier, and let me see.
The one that Richard had.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the fact that the internet is not democratic at all? That one.
Yeah. So, Richard, you want to elaborate more, or?
Maybe I can give some background on it. If you look at the internet, basically, if you put data on the internet, you lose ownership over this data. So in a way, you can see it as as a digital transformation of communism. Everything belongs to everybody, in a way. And then the platforms came up, organizing as intermediaries our data, and basically building new kind of governments or government-like structures to impose their values on us as a users. And we are looking at, from a blockchain point of view, we are looking to bring democracy also by design on the internet, in a way that today, if you want to listen to conversation of people who are probably involved in a crime, a judge normally has to give the order to do that. On the internet, we don't do it like this. We basically listen to every conversation on the net today. All the involved governments are doing that. And blockchain would maybe give us the chance back to implement what was already working in the physical world, also in the internet kind of thing. So that was my background. What I see that g0v is kind of an NGO using very extensively hackathon and internet. That's my current understanding to influence decision making of government, and it seems that the Taiwanese government has a much lower immune system than, for instance, Chinese government about that.
Oh, a quick clarification. g0v is not an NGO. It's not a legal entity. It's a very loose open source community, like you say Python community, or
yeah. I did not say this as from a legal standpoint, but how you operate is kind of the next level of NGO. That was only a remark, maybe wrong. I will rethink it, the statement.
Yeah. So regarding platforms, so I find this interesting because I often ask about these questions by people in US and Europe, and I know and understand that this platformization and also this platform capitalism behind this that make people feel worried, and that's why how this kind of blockchain or some Web3 emerged to kind of counter this centralizations of data within these platform companies. But in Taiwan's context and in a lot of Asian countries, our first target normally is not those platform companies. Unfortunately, Taiwan uses a lot of platforms built by Silicon Valleys, and it's hard for us to say, oh, well, we are going away from there, where we just don't want to use them anymore. If you still in Taiwan want to reach ordinary people, you still need to use Facebook, you still need to use Google, you still need to use those big companies' products. And most of the times, our target will be how to make our government better. This is where the g0v start to kind of resist some closed-door decisions made by the government and make it more open. And gradually, then we start to focusing more on more other public issues related to the land, to Taiwan. However, this even though many participants in g0v is very sensitive about this kind of data exploitation and also this like monopolization by the platforms, I don't think there's now a strong effort trying to counter that, because this is another priority in the list that we try to fight against. So this is the first thing. However, in g0v, we actually trying to use very different, various kind of tools So to make it more decentralized. So we're not just using one platform, so not just using this festival, or we're just not just using Slack, but there were like several dozen different kind of tools using together. So kind of to how to say, to decentralize the risk in a sense. So I don't know if this kind of my interpretation right or wrong. Any others want to add your point, like Yunchen or Taishan or Joshua?
Maybe a comment or a prompt just in the pause about organizing or coordinating all of these, whether it's more organic or more formal or somewhere in the middle. Thanks.
I just what Tom and I noticed that we are over time, but I'm happy to stay and yeah.
Yes, we are all happy to stay. That's fine. I think the last one we went 90 minutes, and this is a fantastic conversation, as Paul said.
Okay, so I would say it's more organic, or sometimes some people recognize it as democracy, which, let me type down. Which means that people who do more get to decide how to do it. And I think things work more like that. So the coders have more powers over the coding parts they are working on. And if you're no longer working on that part, and someone, patch more and kind of, I want to say in charge, but contribute more to that features or something, then the people who involve more get to decide what features going to look like, or which technology architecture or structure they are going to use. So it's more like that, but actually different projects really have different governance models. So for example, the factory project I'm working on, it's actually an experiment of a formal NGO who has no idea how to develop a website, and who only use Excel and Word to collaborate, and only after knowing us that starting to use cloud collaboration, working with g0v that to develop a platform, and g0v is a community. When I told the NGO that, we cannot promise a time, and people come and go, and I'm not going to ask them to contribute for 10 hours or 12 hours a week. It's, really spontaneous, and they were like very, very shocked that how can this kind of collaboration ways can actually make things done. So I would say definitely more organic, but also in the summit, like when we hosted a 1,000 people event, you're going to, for sponsorship, you are going to book the hotel, the venue. Then the task force was more structured and organized. But that task force only exists for 1 year for that summit. And the next summit will be different people running the task force. So different projects, different governance model.
Yeah, maybe on that note, you hit on something that I wanted to bring up in my original notes. And I mean, I've been in blockchain since the late 2016, and I like to make a joke that my experience with decentralized technologies is that they work best, especially at the beginning, if somebody's in charge. And the question is more on the, I'm curious about how you guys go about awareness building for g0v, and getting people involved. Is it active? Is it also just organic? And I'm curious, is this very much an urban thing, or is it a Taipei thing, or is it really the whole country? Or
so I think yes, there is still kind of a history of g0v. So in the beginning, around like 2012 to probably like 2014, it's mainly about the Taipei things, tech people, especially open source people, joining this g0v movement. Mm-hmm. At that time, there's only one IRC channels, everyone gathered in one room. The co-founder will like start the hackathons, like invite people to join in. So the governance model is there's not really a structure, but you still know there are one or two figures that is kind of leading this kind of movement. We will like waiting for a few of them to start a hackathon, right, so to speak. Around like 2014, after the Sunflower movement, various people with different skills, especially those activists on streets, join g0v. That brings this very vibrant civil spirit into this g0v movement, and that from there you start to see various projects focusing on not only political projects. And at that moment, the community also become police-centric because there are different kind of projects. Different kind of projects have different governance model. There will be different project owners, like leading one project or another. So every different thing they will kind of loosely connected with each other upon this open idea and this nobody spirit. So this is very important, that the idea about we all call ourselves as nobody, because being a nobody, not a somebody that everyone can join, right? But this nobody still is somebody. So there are a lot of people getting wrong. So there will be different centers connected together. So from then till now, you will see it's more like organic development of the governance. That's why a lot of times I feel it's hard to say that, oh, let's introduce blockchain to our governance model, because no one can do that. You know, no one can say, okay, we will use one technology to govern the entire society. The only possible way is one project, one task, start to use that. And then people think, oh, yeah, that's cool. Then gradually introducing into other centers and then connect together for this entire community. So that's how I think that this community works. I hope this explains.
I think just to support what you just said, MG, which is, I think, very true. We've seen some early experimentation here in Switzerland on incorporating some on-chain technologies, like from very close to local governments, which ultimately haven't been very successful because they were missing this grassroots support. And for example, what we've seen is a citizen registry that was on-chain, that, you know, the demand for that wasn't ultimately so high, so eventually the project got shut down. Because, you know, why would you do that? It was missing this ecosystem, it was missing the grassroots, it was missing the small project that would actually bring demand for it. And I'm actually personally pretty excited to see now that we kind of understood this and reverse it, like, what can we actually make happen in the real world with these crazy technologies, and then see how it interfaces alternative forms of governance. I think this will be there will be a lot of disruption when this happens in reality, not in a kind of top-down fashion.
Hey, I want to, Josh, did you want to say something? Because one question was the awareness building, and because you are relatively new to g0v, would you want to share your experience from knowing g0v and then participating and then join the weekly or bi-weekly development?
As in my experience working on a project? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So we, but I think Taishan could be a better person to talk about this. Taishan, do you want to share your experience?
Do you mean running a project, or talk about the link you just pasted? You mean running a project, right?
Oh, no, I mean that, I forgot who asked that, how g0v to do the awareness building. And I guess one question behind that is, how do people get onboarded or how do participants know about g0v, and how after they know about g0v, how they become participants. That's why I think you two probably can share that journey. And by the way, MG and I are not developers, but Taixiang and Josh, they are developers.
Okay, I think I can share some of my experience. I got your question now. Thank you. Thanks for the elaboration. I think there are two main action items for me as a project manager plus a developer. The first one is trying to, if you want to call for awareness, the only thing you need to do is try to broadcast what you are doing regularly, and host a small but long-running meetup regularly as well. So you couldn't, because the community is organic, you probably couldn't expect who is going to join this time. But if you keep broadcasting via a meetup something, then you will grow up your base, and then someone who is not only interested in your project, but also have the ability to fit your roles of your project will show up in the end. So firstly, keep running a small, cozy meetup. And the second lesson learned for me is because try to guide someone, not only the technical part, but also why he or she, they are interested in this project. Because at the very beginning, they may just simply think, okay, this sounds fun, this sounds interesting, but they may not think of what the value you are going to achieve or deliver. So you may I may try to keep talking with the participants, like which part you are interested in the mostly, and what are you going to achieve in this project in a hackathon. So it looks like the meetup is a technical meetup. We write the code together, but in the meantime, I try to call for their awareness why they are writing the code for something. So keep pushing them to think about why they are doing this. And this is the two lessons learned I can probably share.
Okay, I'll add on the sort of the awareness in terms of like publicity and how people, general citizen, know about g0v. And I think it's something you can really feel in your daily life. And well, to be fair, g0v has been around for nearly 10 years now. So it's like an ongoing hackathon that just keep popping out new projects that directly impact people's life. Like I remember when there was like a mask shortage, and then people came in together and then developed this app like to show where the masks are, where you can get your mask. And for example, when there was like water shortage, and people sort of came in together and developed this like visualization of where the water storage, the dam are running low. And so I think there's a strong social momentum to begin with, because how fed up the people were with how governments look like in the past. And now, like with this constant exposure of new projects coming out, and then people trying out new exciting projects, I think as a general citizen, you started to hear about this sort of this kind of gathering and this kind of momentum a lot in your daily news, and also people try these things out all the time, and that's essentially how I got in touch with g0v, right? And I was like, wow, they're doing a lot of interesting, exciting things, and instead of and I feel like you can diverge a bit of your time and effort to participate in something like this, and it's very fun and exciting. Like to do something that potentially, has some sort of impact on the society. So I think it's a sort of like a upward or like an upward cycle. Like people start building more things, and then people are more aware of these things, and then it harnesses a good sort of synergy, and for people to come in together, and more and more things are built on top of that. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Joshua. That's kind of what I was curious about, to get a sense of how it's on the ground. So Sebastian just said he has to go in about 5 minutes, although we can stay here. I don't know if anybody else has anything else. I would have one final question at the end as well. But we're getting on to 90 minutes, which is fantastic.
I just wanted to say before I drop off that I really thank you, both ladies, for this wonderful introduction, and it makes me very, hopeful for a lot of our futures, that there's people taking this topic so seriously and looking in so many, not just top down, but really bottom up organizations. Thank you for that.
Thank you for organizing the event, and I'm looking forward for future discussion and collaboration as well.
Yeah, it's thanks to you guys too. It's I really appreciate you taking the time and coming here, and how cooperative it's been. And I think if I've learned anything from this discussion, it's driving it home again that it's not just about the technology, it's about the people behind it, and that these two things can reinforce each other. But you can't. Your slide about you can't fix democracy with tech. You just get broken tech is I think a really good one. I would have one last question for you guys before we go, which I feel obliged to ask as a co-lead of this RadicalxChange Swiss chapter, which is to what degree can we imagine that the sort of radical exchange ideas are popular or in gov0 or in Taiwan? This quadratic voting is probably the most well known, certainly in governance circles. And we know about this collaboration with Audrey and Glenn, but I'm curious if to what extent other people are thinking about radical exchange, if at all.
I can go first. So I will pick a very simple answer first. I think nobody is actually a very radical answer to that. And it means it's what we actually practice now. So how we trying to decentralize it as nobody still participated in things, still trying to fix things, but not as somebody, right? So we don't rely on big peoples in the government. We don't rely simply on Audrey, who becomes the digital minister. We are trying to do our things, even though that means we might need to fight against the government. But as nobodies, that means a lot, I think.
Okay, I think I want to comment that. So, first of all, I think RadicalxChange or the book Radical Market really has, I think it's a good seller in Taiwan. But Glenn claimed that quadratic vote is excessive use in Taiwan politics. I totally disagree that. The most visible application of that voting was in the presidential hackathon, which I think less than 1,000 citizens vote on it. And the tokens are like not their assets. They are like just, you go to register a website, you get 100 points, and you can distribute your vote in a quadratic way to vote for the projects that you support to win the presidential hackathon. And that hackathon doesn't have any prize. The only prize is that you can see the president and you can ask for government data through a process, and you will be on the news and some t-shirts with it. So I would say that's a totally false perception of that many methods mentioned in radical markets, or especially quadratic votes, are excessive use in Taiwan. But I think it's still interesting ideas to try it out in, different fields. Like, I know there are some student clubs are trying to do that, but I would say it's at a smaller scale.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, but I think the ideas itself is very interesting. So people are thinking in the RadicalxChange Taiwan chapter, also doing some events and sharing meetup like this as well. But I think they start target more to the Web3 people and not to like a more general public. But like back in 2018, my team did host open discussion sessions on the blockchain governance, and at that time, the Taipei Ethereum meetup people showed up, and there are some discussion, and we even have a very hard time to telling people that blockchain governance doesn't mean that we put the government, the real political government on blockchain. We are going to talk about the governance models of blockchain community. And we spent 1 hour to explain that. And now, 4 years later, when I mentioned blockchain governance, 2 out of 3 people knows that I'm referring to, the governance on the blockchain. So I think the ideas is spread and the discussions is going on.
Great. I think that's not a bad note to end this on. Unless, does anybody have anything else they'd like to say as we come up?
Thank you for being here. It's great.
Oh my God, I don't want to end like this. So
okay, what do we got?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say. So I told a high school student that I'm going to share at a RadicalxChange today, and I recommended her the Radical Market, the book, and she say she's going to buy it, and really interesting idea. So probably we cannot see those rather radical ideas embodied right now, but younger generations, they are very interested in those experiments, and I'm looking forward to how far we can go. That's a better ending,
That's a better
positive.
Ending. But maybe just to say, Sebastian and I, we people are interested in these ideas here in our chapter. We're not we're evangelists to a degree, but we're open, and we wanted this group to be about discussing larger issues of governance, and your original answer was fine. It was honest, and that's what we wanted to hear. With that in mind, I think again from my side and from Sebastian's side, thank you guys so much for your time and for a really cool discussion. And if all goes well and the recording gets recorded, then we will post this hopefully within a day or two. I'll post the slides, and we are working on the April and May editions, and we'll try to continue on these themes. If anybody has ideas for meetups in this group, just get in touch over the meetup group. Yeah, thanks so much, really.
Yes, thank you. I'm really happy to be here and give me a lot of inspiration on the future work I can do.
Thank you for
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you everyone for being here.
Bye, everyone.